This is it? The car that saved BMW? It's a peculiar-looking thing. Not much of a puzzle why it was called a bubble car. And no surprise, it was originally designed by a refrigerator company. When the door opens, the steering wheel slides aside to let you get past. And when you drive it, be prepared for some stairs.
Well, the experience now driving it among these other larger cars that are out, especially where we are in San Francisco, you have people gawking. They're not sure if it's what's coming next year or where this came from. They look at the license plate, you get questions all the time. It's just easy to drive in city traffic. I love it. I don't know if I'd want to be out at 65 and 70 miles an hour, but it's great for around town.
Wayne Barnes is the curator of the San Francisco Institute of Art car collection, home of about 50 classic and vintage automobiles. And on any given day, you'll find Wayne behind the wheel of his favorite car.
It's an easy car to drive because it's very light. The steering is light, it shifts easily, the clutch is easy to push in, it has great visibility. You have no problems, especially in city traffic, being able to see what's going on around you. This is generally the car that I pick to drive. I give the other guys the big cars to drive. I like this car.
It's called the BMW Isetta. Not just the Isetta, but the BMW Isetta. The German car company had bought the design from the Italian company Iso. The Italians called the car Isetta, meaning small Iso.
They had a completely different engine. They had their own engines. It was a Siamese single cylinder. Their engines weren't as reliable as they should be. And that was the downfall. A lot of these microcars, the engines and the powertrains were not as good as they should have been.
Variants of the Isetta appeared all over Europe, including a three-wheeled version.
But it was only a three-wheeled vehicle in Britain because of the taxes, which was another issue for this whole microcar thing, that you didn't pay the taxes for a regular road car. You also, in some cases in France, there were a number of them, they didn't even need driver's licenses.
Norm Mort has his own collection of microcars. He has a BMW Isetta in pieces.
The thing about microcars is they cost as much to restore as any car. They might be small, but remember, just as you go in to buy a suit, whether you're a size 36 or a size 48, you still pay the same price. And they are nice and light. So as a result, many people can do the restorations on their own, whereas if you had a Ford truck, you wouldn't be doing this. So you just need a good friend. You all right there, Rob?
Oh, yeah.
By the mid-1950s, BMW was in deep trouble. Europe was still suffering through a post-war depression, and the manufacturers like BMW were restricted in what they could produce. The Isetta was a godsend.
It did save the company in the 50s because they were very close to bankruptcy. And if it hadn't been the Isetta's success in the German market, there would be no BMW today. In Germany, of course, you had Messerschmitt, Henkel, and BMW, who were aircraft companies, but they weren't allowed to build aircraft after the war. And because of that, they had to find something else for their engineering staff, their trained staff to build.
Norm is a microcar enthusiast. He's owned dozens and has literally written the book on micro trucks. His daily driver is a teeny truck called an Autobianchi. A vehicle that would barely qualify as a truck in most jurisdictions these days.
Autobianchi actually is a company that dates back to the early 1900s. And they did build cars, and they actually built some trucks, and they built motorcycles. It was pretty well devastated by the war. They were looking for something to build, but they didn't have any money for development. So they heard of Fiat building a new small car, and they approached Fiat and Pirelli. And Fiat and Pirelli gave them money to develop the Autobianchi car, the Bianchina. So where Fiat were turning out, again, 300 cars a day, Autobianchi, they only made 50. They were very rudimentary in design. Again, it was cost. Keep the costs as low as possible. And then you have the engine, of course, right inside with you, being in the back, so that all the noise, all the heat is right there. So it is a very basic. It did replace the donkey and the cart. It was designed for florists, for dry cleaners to pick up laundry, cake shops. Nothing terribly heavy. You didn't see these on construction sites.
But of all the bubble and micro cars, the strangest and possibly the most iconographic is this one, the 1955 Messerschmitt.
The Messerschmitt, well, everybody thinks that that canopy is actually from a Messerschmitt warplane. It does look somewhat like that, and it does look like part of the cowl from a Messerschmitt.
An automotive flight of fancy, years ahead of its time.